Hello everybody, so here is Luna Delira again, and I'm here to talk to you about two types that I believe are among the most misunderstood types out there. And these two types are specifically the most feared type of the MBTI rose, which is feared for no reason, and it's ESTPs. And the other type is the most misconstrued type of the whole MBTI rose, and it's ENTPs. So ESTP versus ENTP. Before I continue and I start talking about these two types, I want to make a premises. And this premises is that we are entering for the first time with my videos in the thinker's realm with a comparison. And this entering the thinker's realm will show us how actually multifaceted the thinker's realm actually is. So you will realize that when it comes to feelers, that it is sensors or intuitives, the focus is always more or less making friends, being in touch with people, being friendly to people one way or the other, compassion versus empathy versus sympathy versus how you actually approach ethics and what approach to ethics to have, and they are all very close to one another, and that's why it is so difficult to type feelers, because they do not look the same way, but being all focused on people and having this socially oriented kind of focus, it is more difficult to come to a very clear split on how they work. Whereas when it comes to thinkers, you will slowly realize and see yourselves that here we're having to do with an extremely multifaceted realm. And that's because the thinking functions change according to the other functions with which they are combined. And you have to consider that thinking functions are applied to realms of study, mostly. So accurate thinking is based on raw knowledge. Intuitive thinking is based on experience, not real, like categorizing things. So basically, it's reality oriented. That's what I meant. I didn't mean experience. I mean that it is reality oriented. So categorization of reality versus raw knowledge, and efficiency is TIT. TIT. I want to keep the two things divided. Anyway, back to us. Why do I say that they are very multifaceted? Because you have to think that these people are more focused on the realm of science. So when we talk about science, we can talk about inventions, we can talk about business, we can talk about space shuttles, we can talk about microorganisms, we can talk about psychology, we can talk about all of these things that revolve around the concept of study and research. So that it is going to be a lot easier to actually split and type and recognize thinkers than it's going to be to split and type and recognize feelers. So let's start from ESTP versus ENTP. These types have the two core functions in common. So we're talking about TI and FE. They are TE demonstrative and FI vulnerable. Anyway, starting from scratch. These two types use intuitive thinking in different ways. So this is already a difference from where we are used to see that they have things in common, that the types have things in common. We start with a split. They use introverted thinking in a different way. They are both FE oriented, but their FE tertiary, sorry, but their extrovert feeling manifests in different ways. If ESTPs use their introvert feeling to be included in society and to be accepted in society, and they want to be accepted in society. ENTPs have a slightly different extrovert feeling focus, and they're more focused on having their ideas accepted and their views accepted. And that's because ENTPs are inventors, whereas ESTPs are materialistic businessmen, basically. So material or concrete or reality-oriented, anyway, businessman. So I think materialistic actually applies to ESTPs. But anyway, moving on. How does TI work in these two types? ENTPs, sorry, let's start from the intuitive type. ENTPs use their introvert thinking to categorize the bulk of ideas that they have going through their minds. So basically, extrovert intuition is the intuition of potential, we know, and extrovert intuition produces gazillions of ideas a second. And all these ideas are applied to a realm of discovery. So they see what is not there in the world, and they come up with what the world could potentially make use of. So they are basically the type that can use they use their TI to categorize these things and materialize these things. So basically they're the type that enters a cafeteria, orders a coffee, and they see that the person that is making the coffee is having difficulties because the coffee machine doesn't perform that specific thing. And if the coffee machine actually had that thing, the person that is making coffee would have an easier time. So the ENTP is going to be the person that sees that thing missing and potentially being useful. So they're going to go home, take a model of whatever model of coffee machine, and create the coffee machine with that thing that was not there when it was needed. So they see what is not there and what could potentially be useful, and they build it. They use their TI to actually materialize it. I read that another way that they use their TI is to understand how things work, so they can use their TI to, I think that's more of a TE demonstrative trait, because it's more extrovert thinking that goes seeing that uses thing and works on things physically. So it could be one way in which they use extrovert thinking demonstrative. But anyway, they can break down a system, like a coffee machine, for example, to see how it works, and then rebuild it with modifications of things that they know that are not there, and make it better. Examples of ENTPs to make you understand what kind of person we are having to do. I'm having issues with that word recently. Anyway, the father in Belle and the Beast is Maurice, is an ENTP. Another ENTP I can think of is Tony Stark in the movies, especially in the third movie, Iron Man 3. So these two individuals are what an ENTP would be like. So very, very active mind, focused on what potentially could be built, and TI oriented towards this goal. And there, another one could be Phileas Fogg in the new movie Travel Around the World. But anyway, the character of Phileas Fogg is an inventor, and that's another ENTP. And if you think of the character of Phileas Fogg in the new movie, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you see his relationship to the young painter, to the girl with whom he falls in love. She is interested in his ideas and understanding his realm and his mind, and he feels accepted because he has the possibility to actually explain all these things and make all these things and share all these things with someone that is truly interested. Another moment in which we see in that movie an ENTP's extrovert feeling at play is when the queen tells him that she's interested in his endeavors. He feels accepted, and he automatically lights up and livens and becomes. He basically lights up. That's something that thinkers tend to make when a reaction that a lot of thinkers tend to have when they are listened or heard or they feel accepted. They tend to have this kind of lighten up kind of reaction, and it's really, really lifting for the heart to see that. And this is the first three functions of an ENTP and how they work all together. Like I said, extrovert thinking, demonstrative, they use knowledge for their goals. Everything an ENTP or an ESTP researches, and this they have in common, is solely oriented towards using that knowledge for the goals of their introvert thinking or for the goals of their dominant function, but they do not randomly research things just for the sake of it, unless they see someone needs that, but that's another story. Inferior function, they are introvert sensing inferior. Our inventors are introvert sensing inferior. It means that they are so constantly focused on creating, doing, and thinking, and pondering, and having their minds work so hard that they need someone to calm them down and to actually make them leave that relaxation and that comfort that they need. They need someone with the ability to create around them comfort and relaxation. If you want to know more about introvert sensing inferior function, I would suggest you to watch my ESTP versus ENFP video, which explains how introvert sensing in the inferior position works. Introvert ethics as a vulnerable function. I will talk about introvert ethics as a vulnerable function at the end of the ESTP description, in common with the two types. So let's move on to onto our ESTPs. ESTPs, action-oriented powerhouses. Everybody sees them running on motorbikes and doing that kind of shit. That's more an ISTP, ISTJ trait. ESTPs use their... Okay. It's difficult to explain because we're having to do with the most objective and the most objectively material of all the types. There is no other type out there, not even ISTPs, sharing the same degree of objectivity about the world around them. So what we have is someone that sees the world exactly the way it is and labels it exactly with the names that are designed to define that thing. So if you want to understand what an ESTP is talking about, unless they are developed and they changed a little bit and they accepted a little bit to use extrovert thinking a little bit more, you will have to do with someone that uses words not the way everybody uses them, but the way they were designed to be used. And they use those words to label the world the way they see it. An ESTP's focus is on social environment. And the reason why they're so focused on on social environments is because of their extrovert feeling. Their extrovert feeling is aimed at being accepted. And the reason why they need to be accepted is exactly because of this super objectivity that they're made of. Tends to make them a little bit excluded, and that's because 99.999% of the other types is actually using introvert feeling in some way, and therefore 98% we have also ENTPs that do not really use an extra introvert feeling, and we will see it later. But anyway, every other type except from this two uses introvert feeling. What is introvert feeling? Introvert feeling basically means judging with subjective values. So anything an ESTP says is taken as a judgment, but it's not a judgment. What ESTPs say is ascetic. It's basically not bearing any form of anything, any form of judgment, any form of anything whatsoever. They are raw categorizers of cold reality. And that's why they're depicted as extremely cold, when actually their extrovert feeling tertiary makes them one of the most warmth-seeking types and most in need of warmth of the old MBTI rows. They're basically cuddly teddy bears, even if they don't want to be. So why? Because extrovert sensing basically sees things as they are. They see people for what they're actually doing and what is actually happening in the moment. So they basically see what is going on and what is in front of them exactly the way it is. And like I said, introvert thinking labels that reality exactly the way that reality should be called. So if someone is, if an ESTP is standing in a shop and they see someone entering and taking an object from a shelf and putting it in their pocket, an ESTP is going to say, "There's a thief down there." There's not going to be any form of ethical observation whatsoever in what they say. There is a thief down there. This is going on right now here, and this is what the reality in front of me is. Someone that takes something, there is an even more a specific word for that, I think. Let me see if I can find the English version. Shoplifter. Yes, that's the word that an ESTP would choose in that specific circumstance. An ESTP would probably turn towards the shopkeeper and say, "There's a shoplifter down there." That's what an ESTP would do. It is also possible, if the situation requires it, that the ESTP will intervene. And that's because of their strongly volitional extrovert sensing. Extrovert sensing is also power and seeing the kinetic energy moving around them. So an ESTP will never intervene if he's not in a position to do anything, and they will intervene when the situation, when the person in front of them is weaker, or when they actually can do something. Otherwise, they will find other solutions. I made a list of memes of ESTPs on my page, and there is one that says calling bullshit all around the world. And that's what they do. They call out bullshit. They see bullshit like from here to there. They don't even need to focus, and that's because of their view of the external world exactly the way it is. So anything that they find in front of them, they're going to see exactly the way it is, without filters, without anything. That's how an extrovert sensing works in ESTPs. So they have this need to be accepted by people, and they actually tend not to be very social. ENTPs are also not very social type, and they tend to pull themselves out of social situations because they know that being one type being so focused on their personal researches and the other type being so focused on reality and seeing reality the way it is and expressing reality the way reality is, they tend to be rejected and judged a lot. And therefore, they tend to isolate and wait for someone with extrovert feeling, helping them connect with the surrounding environment. ESTPs even less inclined to research unless it goes towards their goals. So, for example, an ESTP that decides to understand MBTI, to understand the social environment and to understand people, will study in depth a lot of stuff about psychology, but all of this stuff will have to be applied to the external world and will have to be seen by the ESTP as corresponding to reality. So that's how ESTPs test extrovert thinking most of the time. Examples of ESTPs before we pass to inferior intuition seeking, inferior, sorry. Example of ESTPs that I can think of. It's not really easy, but I know that Gulenko, for example, should be an ESTP in Socionics, the one that comes up with all these weird categorizations in Socionics. Right now, the movie, right, the movie. Oh my God. Equilibrium. In the movie Equilibrium, there is this character, the protagonist, that suddenly learns what emotions are and how emotions feel. I posted it as an example of Enneagram 8. That would be an ESTP Enneagram 8. With this soft heart that he doesn't show, that actually wants to help and wants to understand the external world. Intuition seeking. Intuition seeking would be a need for depth. So they see the reality around them so superficially and so objectively that they need someone to help them see the implications of or the depth of the connections among those things. So basically, they need help figuring out why one person behaves one way or another, or what leads people to have one reaction over another. Why people do what they do. So people's intentions are a strong focus of ESTPs. And INFJs are extremely good in helping them in this thing. Also, cause and effect. So they have this subconscious sense of cause and effect in reality, in the real world around them. They roughly perceive, they have it in their subconscious how chains of events actually develop or are developing, but they are focused with that only in the here and now and in the past. They lack the ability to take those chains and project them into the future. So an ESTP is not able to see where their project is going to land and what direction their project is going to follow. So how the situation is going to develop in the future. And they need someone with the ability to help them see how situations will develop in the future. One thing that I know about ESTPs, and I have a lot of experience with ESTPs. Oh, one example of ESTP would be DJ R&D online, of course. Anyway, ESTPs tend to be catastrophistic, like extremely catastrophistic about the future, especially in relationships. Especially in relationships, they tend to have this fear of the future, and they need someone to calm them down about that. Otherwise, they start projecting negative possible consequences in the near or distant future, especially in relationships. Like, I'm gonna lose that friend because he's not gonna accept me for this and that, and they're very catastrophistic, and they need someone to calm them down and actually tell them, relax, nothing's gonna happen, everything's gonna be all right, don't worry. So this is a little bit of the need of ESTPs. It's not their weak spot. Also ENTPs. A lot of people tend to think that the inferior function is some sort of weak spot of the person. We actually do not realize that that is a problem until we find the dual that actually helps us in that realm. So pushing an ESTP to talk about the future consequences of their behavior or whatever is only going to face you with someone that is going to say something and be happy with that. So it's not going to imbalance them or make them feel bad about themselves as much as if you go to an ENTP and tell them something like I don't know, you need to relax more. They're not going to feel bad about themselves, or they'll just gonna look at you and tell you something on the line of I just finished inventing that thing, and they will not even notice. So that's a subconscious function, and it's something that really doesn't cause issues to the person. ESTPs in particular have this extrovert sensing. They believe that they're able to do anything. So they believe they are good at whatever you put in front of them. And therefore, it's basically impossible to make them feel weak about anything. Vulnerable function of these two types, intuitive feelings. So they lack a sense of right and wrong, and they lack I personally see it more as a plus added value than a negativity. But anyway, they lack a sense of right and wrong coming from themselves, so they tend to apply the right and wrong ideas coming from the external world. So they usually have that person that they trust, and they let them decide what is right and what is wrong for them, and they apply through extrovert feeling this sense of right and wrong, because they do not have their own right and wrong. These two types are the most innocent types you will ever meet. And they're the most innocent types you will ever meet exactly for this reason, because they do not have their personal sense of right and wrong, and therefore they need to grasp on someone else's right and wrong. And they do not form their own idea. The worst thing that can happen to this type of being so innocent, to these two types of being so innocent, is to rely on someone that has a fucked up sense of right and wrong. So if they rely on someone that believes that cheating is alright, if they rely on someone that believes that stealing is alright, if they rely on someone that believes that beating up people is alright, they will do all of those things without any doubt that they're doing the right thing. So that's a danger for this type, and that's because they are absolutely innocent in the sense of right and wrong. They have no sense whatsoever of what is right and what is wrong, and that's their weak intuitive feeling. And they also don't see why they should focus on that, or why it is important to have a personal sense of right and wrong. And they do not judge anything. They do not judge anything, ever. ENTPs and ESTPs, they lack the focus on judgment. And when they're judged themselves, of course, they tend not to realize it. But if they do realize it, they can remain silent and not really show it, but take it very bad. But honestly, I think it's cruel to judge these people, because someone that doesn't judge you ever and will never ever focus on judging you, I think it's cruel to just go to them and judge them. But anyway, do as you wish. Anyway, uh, why is that they do not judge? It's because they do not attach an emotional value to anything. So basically, they do not have their personal sense of emotional value attached to things. And that makes them very detached and extremely objective. Both types, even more ESTPs. So this is everything I have about these types. ESTPs and ENTPs are very rare out there. We're talking about just 3.1% of the world population for ENTPs and 3.6% for ESTPs. So it's not really easy to stumble into one of these people, especially women. Especially women. Women are very rare in these types. I agree with Jung, by the way, that sensors tend to be more male, thinkers tend to be more male. So we have ESTP and ENTP. Probably ENTP a little more women. I have an ENTP friend. She's awesome. She makes me laugh a lot. She's really funny. And so ESTPs, extremely rare. I know a bunch, but a bunch means 3 or 4, and that's all I ever met in my life. And one of them is my aunt, so that's how I met her. Anyway, this is everything I have about the matter. I hope it helped and it made a little bit more clarity on these two types. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.